If you had to bottle up intentionality, what would it be made of?
The feeling of thoughtfulness, the feeling of honor.
What do you think stops women from being an agenda woman?
There's a couple of things around who we've been told we are,
Yeah.
the conscious and the subconscious, what we believe we can and can't do. I see it in sometimes my friends.
Share with us, how can we leverage on relationships, to grow? Because I think sometimes we really underestimate how powerful they are in the pursuit of being self-made.
It's so important to have diversity in exposure. Be exposed as much as you possibly can. That's how you learn. And I think that's why it's important to be able to have different relationships where you draw different things from.
Yeah.
I'm not desperate in creating relationship.
Ooh. That is so good, because in this day and age of social media, people want to constantly attach themselves to the
No.
person with X amount of followers.
No.
Because then they think that's going to boost their brand.
I'm not desperate. The desperate energy in relationship building is also problematic.
All right. Hello, Resonate community, and welcome to the biggest and the best sales and entrepreneurship podcast in the whole wide world. Today, I have a woman I highly respect, and I'm so excited to talk to. So just prepare yourself for a very long, beautiful soul food conversation that is going to literally give you the message that you've been looking for. Today, I'm joined by Nomndeni Mdaki, who's the CEO and founder of agendawomen, which is an online platform that also hosts a lot of beautiful and absolutely stunning events that helps women connect with like-minded people. And today, we're going to be talking all things purpose, all things business, all things sales strategies, and personal development. Nomndeni Mdaki, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for honoring our invite.
I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you. I'm so excited to talk to you because I can remember very well that it's very rare that I speak to you and I don't tear up.
You know, I was looking at your CNN thing and I remembered how we met.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's insane the fight you have in you. And I remember the other time when I went and you were working somewhere and you were just like, this is not it. This is not it.
Yeah.
And to just have seen you fight for your life. And I say this so much to people that, you have to embrace the fact that you're going to have to fight for the life that you want. And it's so inspiring to see what you've been able to do for yourself.
Wow.
And it's not even the material. It's just the blooming of you. It's just been beautiful to watch.
Sure. Thank you. You're already starting.
Yeah, no, I'm also holding back tears. I was just maybe I need tissue, but I'm going to rehearse today that I'm not going to cry. Everyone who's seen me do anything knows, this is going to be no crying interview.
Yeah.
I'm going to try my best.
Let's cross fingers. Yeah. It's so important because, we've known each other for years.
Yeah.
And for different phases.
Yeah.
And you've taught me so many things that I want to literally unpack. I was thinking about our conversation today and I was like, what do we, there's so much I want to talk to you about. And I just thought to myself, the best way would be bringing in some of the things that you've, helped me with. And some that I don't think you're even aware that you were assisting me with throughout my journey. But before we get into it, I am chastised by our audience if I don't do this when we start our podcast.
Okay.
Which is basically a fire round of questions.
Okay.
To get to know who we are talking to.
Perfect. I love that.
To get to know who we are talking to and just a little bit about you.
Okay.
So I thought to myself, what can one ask now? And my first question to you is that if you could switch careers for a day, what would you want to try and why?
Easily.
What is that?
Easily interior deco.
Really?
Absolutely.
Oh, I see that.
Interior
I can see
deco,
that.
absolutely. I used to say to people, when I'm wealthy, I'm going to be a 50-year-old woman, just doing other wealthy people's houses.
Nice.
I love beautiful spaces. I love design.
Yeah.
I love the energy of spaces. There's something very spiritual, I believe, about spaces and placements of things.
Yeah.
And I think the East particularly hones into that as a philosophy in a way that I think no other cultures have done so far, but absolutely interior designer.
I can see that because we can look at the Agenda Woman platform. Everything you do just looks crisp
design.
And stunning and high level.
I absolutely love design.
Interesting. I love that. All right, second question.
No one's ever asked me that and I've never said that. Only my friends know.
Really? But it was so easy for you.
No, easily. I've always known.
Wow.
I've always known. I love design.
Wow. Interesting. The second one is, what's the best advice you've ever received and from whom?
I've received a lot of advice over the years. I don't know if it's advice, but maybe, I'm turning 40 on Sunday.
What?
Yeah, it's my birthday on Sunday. And maybe I think what I've heard a lot through the years that's settling now
Yeah.
is everything works out. Like everything works out. I think particularly for people like yourself and the audience, anyone tuning into this is actually actively seeking a better life for themselves. And when you engage that energy, I promise you, the universe helps you. You just need to keep going.
Sure.
You just need to keep going. No matter if you feel like you're going backward and maybe you don't know what you're doing. There was a phase in my life where I was just working and I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. But when I think about all those hours, even when I was not clear about what I was doing, they count today.
Wow. Wow.
They count.
That is so good. First of all, how are you 40?
I don't know.
How are you 40? I feel like I've known you for a long time, but 40 is not what I thought you were.
I know. Like, I also don't understand. I was saying to someone, like, 30-year-olds were old people when I was growing up. And I'm like, I'm turning 40. And I mean, I was a little like, oh my gosh, do I want to keep saying it? And, all of that stuff. But, this week, as I was preparing to come to Sunday, which is actually my birthday, I thought to myself, what a privilege it is to have lived this long.
Wow.
I remember growing up, like I lost a lot of people and they were in their 20s and I mean, people die.
Yeah.
And I really connected with the energy of gratitude around the time that I've been given to live, Wow. So more than anything now, I'm just so grateful that I'm like, oh my gosh, not only am I 40, but I think it comes with so much wisdom, which sets me up for the next phase of my life, which feels so exciting. So excited.
Sure. I love that so much because I think now we look at age differently. Did you ever have a season in your life where you put certain goals to a certain age, or you tied them to that?
I think I was very fortunate when I entered my 20s. I mean, I was raised I'm an A-type personality. And so growing up, people have like milestones for you.
Yes.
Oh, you're going to finish. I mean, I was 16 in my final year of high school. I was 12 in my first year of high school. Like, I was 12.
Yeah.
That is insane. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
When I think about it now.
Sure.
But at the time, it was like, oh my gosh, you're so young, but you're so smart and you're doing well.
Yeah.
And that really was, I think, a societal thing. And, my family kind of building that as what my life needs to look like. So I hit all the milestones. I finished school. I went to varsity. I finished. I met my my ex-husband when I was like at varsity. I finished. I had kids. I got married. I literally did all of that. But I had never, I think, for myself, sat and said, what do I want this thing to look like?
Wow.
It was highly influenced by what was expected of me. So I didn't have that thing. I mean, I had my first house at was 26 when I bought my first house, all of those things. I don't think any of them for me were me deciding that that's what I need to do, I do think coming into my 30s, because my 30s were pretty difficult, I started to think about, I said when I'm 45, there's a specific place where I want to be.
Wow.
And it's the first time that I've actually said anything like that. But even with that, it's not like it has to happen or I'm going to die.
Yes.
I'm just like, let's see if I can do it.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get to where I want to get to at 45.
Yeah.
And if not, I'm still fine.
Ooh, that's speaking to me so much because I remember we had, I think it was like a late lunch sometime last year. And there's always these pivotal moments you have with me that I'm like, I hope you're aware what you're doing, like what you're saying. And you looked me in the eye. I don't even remember what we're talking about, but I remember that so well. And you said to me, there is nothing in my life that I want right now.
Yeah.
Like, I've got everything I need. And that doesn't mean like I'm there.
Yeah.
But right now, everything is here.
Yeah.
I am here. And I'm content and I'm happy. And this is it for me.
Yeah. It's so true. Like anyone who asks me how I am, I express that same sentiment.
Wow.
I can have more money. I can have a bigger house. I can have a bigger car. All the things that I think young people are pursuing.
Yeah.
But for me, I'm okay. Like if God forbid, I fall over and die today or tomorrow, I can tell you I'm at the happiest part of my life, and I've been for quite a while. And I think accessing that energy has it almost it's like it gives babies. It gives like, I'm seeing like visuals of like tiny bubbles of happiness, you know. It almost gives birth to more things that you're grateful for, and not even material. Just it gives you access to realizing how much there is already that is going on. And I think there was a certain point in my life where I said, you know what, I'm no longer gonna fight for the ideal as it's defined by the world. Because I think it's the thing that sends people all over the world searching for answers. When in actual fact, if you decide to be content where you are, you start to realize how much more you continue to have. You know, as I think particularly people of color, there is so much around, you're unlucky, you're this, you're that. And there's a point where I put it down and I said, if this is what this particular lifetime is designed as, I'm already doing so much more than so many other people in terms of just living out my dreams. So I will commit to figuring things out, but they will not stop me from living. You know?
Sure. That is so powerful, because I think it removes one from the constant need to chase.
Absolutely.
And the constant need to become. It's like, this is it.
And the constant rhetoric around how bad things are for you. Things are bad for a lot of people.
That's true.
But your mindset is what sets the tone for how your life feels.
Ooh.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's like you could be in a shack somewhere and have this clear vision of what you're going to become and really believe it in the depth of your soul, and live in the pursuit of that vision without being imprisoned by the pursuit as well. You know?
My gosh.
Because sometimes we get like, we create prisons for ourselves because I'm like, I have to hit this mark. I have to.
Yeah.
You don't really have to. It can be a fun exercise to figure out how far you can go.
Oh, that speaks so well into the work that you do. And there's something I love about your platform. It's the tagline, working smart and living well.
I'm so excited when people talk about that because, you know, like I studied marketing and I love brands, you know, and having the privilege and opportunity to build the Agenda Women brand, I think is any marketer's dream, in the sense that if you're brave enough, you start your own and you do that. And if you're not brave enough, you go and, you know, make the brands that exist better. But I think for me, of course, it was always entrepreneurship. But outside of always being passionate about building things, it's just like when I interface with people and they say things back to me that I sit down and I was like, actually, this is what I'm going to make this thing about, you know? And even just like how that developed into our brand philosophy and what we anchor ourselves on is such an interesting journey. But it really is the truth of what I hope women can pursue in their own lives, that holistic empowerment that speaks to really understanding the importance of being a working woman. I'm going to repeat it. It's important to be a working woman.
100%.
And I'm not saying it because I'm those obsessive people who are like, you have to. I'm saying it because everyone, women and men, need to be responsible for earning their own money.
That's true.
It's so important for your own psychological safety, for your ability to access a specific part of yourself where you can dream. It is very important to be able to do that. So outside of that, I also understand how important it is to live, right? We don't live to work, we work to live. Right?
Sure.
And I think we speak about that lightly, but it's very difficult to access and make that your own philosophy in life, because a lot of times it's driven by a lot of our fears and traumas. But the pursuit of, I don't want to call it balance, but intentional harmony around your wellness, your well-being, and your ability to be impactful through your work, impactful to your community, to yourself, to your children, is a very important dynamic.
I love hearing you speak. Like, I could just listen to you for such a long time because you say so many powerful things and you have a way of articulating certain things in a way that just hits it. And as you were speaking, I think in pictures and videos,
I'm the
weirdly enough.
same.
Yeah.
I'm the
It's like I
same.
think in pictures and videos. And as you were speaking, I couldn't help but notice when I see the work that you do, I see your platform, I see the events that you do, just anything connected to you. There's a lot of intentionality.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of like you've thought this through. It's like it's not just I've decided to do this. It's like I was reading a newsletter yesterday and I was like, man, like from the images,
Yeah.
the fonts, like everything about it is well thought through and well put together. And I want to ask you, if you had to bottle up intentionality, what would it be made of?
My own.
Yes. Like we would have to package it and we'll sell it for the Agenda Women Summit.
I don't like the word excellence sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a softer, coral colored word, not like a gray or black or blue, because I'm a very visual person.
Yeah.
I can feel the lightness of the word that I want to use around just, for me, everything I create, the intentionality package of it is what I want to interface with as a person, what makes me feel honored. It's the word that you used earlier. And what gives me access to a new dimension of dreaming. Those are the three things, right?
Okay.
It's the feeling of thoughtfulness. It is the feeling of honor and the access to the next. I've been very privileged in my life. I traveled around the world. I met so many people, different classes of wealth. And there's always been something, I think, for any person that interfaces with luxury, the feeling of the energy of the person that created the thing and their thoughtfulness.
Yeah.
Right? We can go into the price point conversations and all of that.
Yes.
But I think for all of us, when you walk into a Louis Vuitton store, it's different than when you walk into a store that's not Louis Vuitton and not luxury. And that energy that you feel, yes, it's driven by the perception people have of the brand, but what drove the perception of the brand was the creation that went into the storytelling, the design, the positioning, the decisions around how many of the things you create. It's a very intimidating task, but it's a task that I believe I am happy to take on, to create beautiful things that give people access to the next level of dreaming.
Sure. Would you say you found your purpose?
100%. Without a doubt. It's not even a conversation for me anymore.
Yeah.
It's not even a thing I ask God about anymore. I'm very clear. My work is to heal not only the woman that I speak to, but their next generation and their entire lineage. And by virtue of doing that, you heal the children that they raise. By virtue of doing that, you heal the communities that those children exist in and the ones that they create. And by virtue of that, you start to see a shift in how people are coming up with laws and policies that govern how we live. And by virtue of that, you really impact the world. And I fundamentally believe in the women that interface with my work. I believe in them.
Yeah.
Because there is something about getting up and saying, I want better for myself.
Yeah.
I'm going to invest in it, whether I'm investing money or I'm investing time. That energy is the energy that my work meets.
Wow.
I'm not concerned with the people that don't have that energy. I'm concerned with the people who that energy has raised up in.
Wow.
And my work meets that energy.
Yeah.
And that's what catalyzes change in the work that I do.
Sure. What do you think, or what have you seen that stops women from, and I'm going to use this word like this because you and I have had conversations about it, because I really believe it's more than just a platform, it's more than just a word, but it's a doing, it's like a verb. What do you think stops women from being an agenda woman?
There's a couple of things around who we've been told we are.
Yeah.
the conscious and the subconscious, what we believe we can and can't do. And I see it in sometimes my friends, in the things, I see it in me, in the things that I believe I am worthy of, right? It's a fundamental belief around what you are worthy of,
Sure.
right? Are you worthy of the 2,000 rands ticket to get into that space and walk away feeling good and inspired and really accessing another dimension of possibilities? Often when you feel like you're not worthy of that, you go and you buy a dress with that money to cover up the feeling of unworthiness. We spend a lot of time and money in covering up the feeling of unworthiness instead of confronting it and having a conversation with what is happening here.
Yeah.
And I think worth is such a deep thing. There are certain aspects of my own feelings of unworthiness that I'm unpacking now as I turn 40. And I'm really grateful that I am the woman whose energy continues to rise up to engage, with the highest possible version of who I can be. And therefore, I invest in therapy. I invest in things that make me better. Wow. And I think the reason a lot of times women don't do that is because there's a subconscious belief that you're not worthy of being better.
Sure. Where do you think that comes from?
It's a lot of things. It's a lot of things. It's the trauma we experience as young people.
Yeah.
It is what we believe women are and what they're not. There's a lot of conversation around what women should be and what they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of work that is done in us to prepare us to live in a world like that.
Yeah.
And our parents are doing that to protect us. And I think it's important. I do it with my own kids. But there's an importance around you as an individual saying, I understand that was done to protect me, but now I'm going to do the work to access who I'm meant to be. Because when you're still protecting the idea of who you should be, you haven't accessed what you need to be, and what the world needs is you.
Yo. It's like, just drop the mic.
It's like stuff I think about constantly, Michelle, about in thinking about my work and thinking about me and my own limiting beliefs, right? Where are they coming from? Why did I do that? Why do I think like that? Why did I not say something there? It's constant work, and it's there is no point that you get to and you're like, I'm picture perfect now.
Yeah.
What in actual fact happens is you learn to be comfortable with the process. Process is spoken about a lot. And I think because of how much it's spoken about, people start to, shut down when you say process. But there is something powerful in process.
Yeah.
There is something extremely powerful in process. When God created the world, he could have taken a minute, it could have taken a day, but he took time.
Yeah.
Right? He gave himself process, right? And there's something about process that gives us an opportunity to reflect, right? Once you've done your day one, you say, okay, that's beautiful. What does day two look like?
Yeah.
And day two is heavily going to be impacted by what day one showed you.
That's true.
Right? But if you do all things at once, then where is the constant conversation with the universal flow that says, this is the energy that was drawn from the thing that you created. And this is how that energy can flow into the next thing. So there's something extremely beautiful about process if you allow it to happen.
Yeah.
But I also speak maybe from a point of privilege in that I trust a God and other people don't. So that allows me the ease, to stay in process.
Yeah. Sure. So if possible, try Jesus.
Maybe.
But when you talk about process and just tying back to what you're saying, I reflect and I think about what's been very instrumental in my journey. And part of that process was community and relationships.
Absolutely.
It was having that coffee with Nomndeni and you just saying one thing that would light the bulb and eventually make me think a certain way and act a certain way, and other people that have been instrumental in my life. And I'm curious to know from you, and I think you're very good at this. I've seen it, and people who watch you and watch your brand can see it very subtly. But I'd like us to share with us, how can we leverage on relationships, to grow? Because I think sometimes we really underestimate how powerful they are in the pursuit of being self-made, in the pursuit of I pulled myself out, but nobody essentially pulls themselves out of anything.
Absolutely.
We have a community, we have people. And I mean, maybe before you answer, let me tell you this one thing. Oh, you see, I'm not going to cry.
And you're not going to make me cry.
Yeah.
I'm just going to look away.
And it's I have so much planned to talk about, and I want to get into the business stuff that I really want to talk about, but I'm
I was still in the rapid fire. Okay.
We're still in, there's so much. You had an Agenda Woman event. It was held in Melville.
Can I tell you?
Yes.
I was looking through the pictures 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And I did not know you were there.
Yeah. In the yellow dress.
Yes, and you had something in your head.
So vividly, yes.
I literally looked at the pictures recently because of what we want to do with Agenda Women Summit 2024.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, you were there.
Yeah.
That was 2018.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that wasn't even my first one, by the way. There was another one that we had
Rivers, Sands.
Yeah, somewhere like that. And it was a few of us. I think it was the beginning. It was very, very few of us. Where we had Timothy talk about branding and stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
That was the second one I ever did.
Yes. Yeah. So, but let's go back to the Melville one.
Okay.
And I remember it so well because I was going through one of the most excruciating times of my life. And I think you had invited me to it, and I was like, absolutely, I will come. And I came to this event, and it was so good. It was one of those days where I come out, and I was like, yes, love it. And then I came to you and I asked you a question. And I don't even think you remember this, but it changed my life forever. I asked you a question and I asked you, how do you deal with, how do you find yourself in relationships? In it could be a marriage, a relationship. Just if you feel like you're in something, how do you find yourself, not necessarily out of it, but within it? And you said to me, let me tell you, Michelle, compartmentalizing is what people don't realize. And I said, what do you mean? And you said to me that a lot of people take relationships as a one-dimensional thing, but they don't realize that the power in relationships is to compartmentalize, meaning that you're not going to get everything you desire from this very one person, right?
Absolutely.
You went on a tangent and you taught me so much. That changed my entire life.
I can't even remember that conversation. Yeah. I wonder if you had asked me that today, what I would have said, But that's actually true. Yeah. I think about my best friend who we've been best friends for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And how, sometimes she'll call me and she'll say, friend, one of the things I really appreciate about our friendship is the space we give each other without having to explain.
Yes.
Yeah. I can go a week without talking to her and she's going through something and then she'll come back and she'll say, I needed time to unpack it by myself, before I could have a conversation with you.
Yeah.
Because I trust you so much. I didn't want your words to impact and influence how I was feeling about what I needed to understand. And I don't even know where I learned that, but I definitely know it was a lesson even for myself because I wasn't like that young.
Yeah.
There's this idea that, if you have a romantic partner, he's everything. Yeah. He's the beginning and the end. He's my best friend. Your partner does not need to be your best friend. You need a best friend.
Yes.
I
100%.
highly recommend you get a best friend.
Please.
Who is not your husband or your boyfriend.
Yeah.
But if that's what the odds are for you, then it's great. There's nothing wrong with it. But I think it's so important to have diversity in exposure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Be exposed as much as you possibly can. That's how you learn. And I think that's why it's important to be able to have different relationships where you draw different things from those. Can you imagine if your partner is not wanting to vibe with you now? Please.
Now you're upset. And
let your boyfriend or your husband have boys and go and sit with those boys. And if it's a problem when you hear it, then the problem is not the thing, it's the relationship.
Wow. So there's so much going through my mind. I share that because for me, that's an example of community. That's an example of me coming to Agenda Women and asking you a question of something that had been plaguing me and finding breakthrough to realize, actually, no, maybe I need my girls. Like, I need friendships. I need mentors. I need this. I can't just rely on one person to specifically like cater for all these parts of me.
Absolutely. It's just too much pressure also.
It's a lot.
On the person.
Definitely a lot. And I've really taken that into my business, into every single thing that I do. And I think going back to my question is like, how do we start leveraging on relationships in business and in our personal lives? And how do we maybe even start building? Because there are people who say, well, they can't build relationships because they're shy.
So it's a very simple thing for me. I did a personal branding workshop this past Saturday at the Africa Career Summit. And someone asked me a question, and I'm going to contextualize it back to your answer. They said, how do you deal with the transition from being a CEO of Netbank, let's say? Well, maybe that's a bit far-fetched, but a high-profile executive role where you are really influential, to going into maybe, let's say, entrepreneurship or something that doesn't have the influence and the power of the backing of a big brand, when you're working there.
Yeah.
And not having people when the transition happens, right? Because a lot of people, of course, are talking to you because you can give them money for something and, they need access to something. And I said, at the core of building your personal brand, and for me, building your personal brand is not separate from being a human being, right? You have to investigate what your values are. A lot of times when you don't have values, you're unable to build a strong personal brand anchored on something. Even if you're Donald Trump, and I'm going to say Donald Trump, who people perceive quite negatively, he has a personal brand.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting with him. And his people will find him. Do you get me?
Yes.
He will have a network of people who align with his values, right? So at the core of building sustainable relationships that you can lean on is values. I've always been a person, maybe because I was a bit egotistical and maybe I have pride also, where I'm just like, I vibe with people who vibe with me.
Yeah.
And this is not people who like me. Does that make sense?
No.
You're not going to go and seek out people who are going to be like, oh, you're amazing. Oh, you're so good.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
you're so lovely. Oh, no. When I say vibe, I mean we value similar things, Michelle. The reason when you called me and said, can you come? I didn't say, oh, send me this, send me that, send me. It's because by virtue of how you live and how your personal brand shows up, it aligns with my values.
Oh, so it's like the difference between a rapport and a relationship.
Absolutely. I don't build relationships on rapport. I don't book people to come to the Agenda Women Summit on rapport. And I'm so glad you brought that up because I get so many DMs, people asking me, how do you choose your speakers? It's not on rapport.
Yeah.
It's a very sacred space for me and for the women that walk into the room. But outside of that, it really is anchored around the values that I have. And I'm really happy for people who are doing well. But if you're doing well does not align with my values, I'm honestly not interested in it.
Wow.
I'm not going to pursue a relationship with a person based on what they can give me access to if our values are not aligned. Because what happens along the line is we're going to clash. And that clash means if you're powerful, you're going to go and tell other powerful people about how ridiculous I am. So in actual fact, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're exposing yourself in an environment where you will not be able to keep up with what needs to happen in that environment for the relationship to grow. So at the core is values. You can always go up and speak to someone about something that you value. And if they value it back, there'll be a conversation. But if there's no ability for that conversation to take place, it's okay. Walk away. Sometimes it's just where that person is in their life. I go up to women where I'm like excited. And I was in a powerful room recently, a powerful woman. And there's this lady who came up and when she spoke, I was like, that lady reminds me of the energy of my life. When I went up and spoke to her, she literally just put up a wall and I was not offended. I just felt like, maybe she's in a phase in her life where there's a lot of people who are asking of things from her.
Yeah.
I also allow that to happen, that if I don't find you in the right place today, maybe in the future, in a different environment, in different circumstances, you'll be more open. There's something you would have learned. I'm not desperate in creating relationship.
Oh. That is so good, because in this day and age of social media, people want to constantly attach themselves to the person with X amount of followers.
No.
Because then they think that's going to boost their brand.
I'm not desperate. The desperate energy in relationship building is also problematic. I have relationships that are long-term with people that I can call on, and the thing that anchors that relationship, even when I don't speak to those people on a daily basis, is value alignment.
Wow.
So when I say, I recently called someone who has been coming to the Agenda Women Summit for a couple of years as a speaker and mentor. And I said to her, listen, I really value the work that you do, but I think it's unreasonable for me to call you every year. Also, the audience has really engaged with you.
Yes.
Tell me what you think you can do. And let's explore what you think the opportunity can be for you in the platform. Right? You've given me so much of your time.
Yes.
Our values are aligned. I just don't know how to do something again with you this year.
Wow.
So tell me what you think we can do. What do you think can be valuable for the audience? There's no exchange of money. There is no, if you do it for me, she's never asked me actually to do something for her. I think she's asked me once. Wow. And the values being mutually beneficial, the values being similar, is the thing that allows us to continue to have the conversation. It's easy for me to repost your stuff from CNN, because I'm just like, that's the kind of stuff I want women to be seeing. That's the kind of story I want to be amplifying. Those, not because it's CNN, but because I know the journey that led to that moment. So you don't need to call me and say, friend, can you please repost? Or, no, you don't, because there is a fundamental alignment in values. And when there isn't, I tend to walk away until there is in the future. It doesn't mean that I don't like the person. It just means at the time when we meet, maybe there isn't an alignment. There could be one in the future.
Yeah, that's so encouraging, because the message there is essentially work on yourself. Like, if you work on yourself, you will gravitate and be able to relate to people that vibe with you.
Absolutely.
Like you said, which is very, very powerful. You speak a lot on branding, and I'll always refer to your work, because every time I look at it, I'm like, what font is this? Like, Nomndeni is so particular.
I'm so obsessed.
Like, everything.
I'm so obsessed. I can't tell you how many Instagram pages of designers I follow. And I'm just like, oh, that font. And then, they do fonts that can match.
Yes.
And I look and I'm like, none of them speak to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay,
even
I'll find something
just
else.
The Agenda Woman Instagram page, it's like every post is well thought through, like the fonts, like just everything communicates. And I'm like, okay.
I wish I could literally show you a message I just sent to CD, because there were like posts that she did. So I don't do it, but I look at it and I cringe sometimes, because I'm just like, why did you post this with this? And then I also have to hold myself back and say, it's not about that. It's about the content.
Yeah.
But also, I want to always go the extra mile of delivering good content, but also it needs to be beautiful.
Yes.
So, I care about that stuff.
I love that about you so much. And I can totally understand, because you used to have a creative agency before.
Yes.
That's actually when we met.
Yes.
You were running a kick-ass creative agency.
Yes.
And I want to get into like the business and like the heart and the meaty revenue, money, all that kind of stuff. And I'm curious to know, I mean, we have a lot of women, and I know this was also a conversation, part of the conversation last year on Agenda Women, around kind of building something that matters to you. And every time we want to build now, because everything's on social media, branding is the first thing we think about. It's like, okay, I must build a brand. And what does, I just want to find out from you, in like the most simplistic way possible, what do you mean when people like you say to us, build a brand? Like, does that mean I need to go look for specific fonts and colors to my company name?
I mean, it helps. That's an interesting question, because I have fundamental beliefs, but I don't want to lie to people and share my beliefs and not the truth. So let me give you the history of branding.
Okay.
Right? So in 2000 BC, right, people were trading with cattle. And there were cattle that were better than others, right?
Okay.
But everything looks the same. What the traders who had the quality cattle started to do was to brand their cattle. and they would put a symbol. I'm sure if you Google branding, just say branding 2000 BC, you'll be able to see an image like that. You know, you see a kettle and that hot stick or something. I don't know what to call it.
I think I see it.
And it would be either it's an S with it's essentially a logo.
Yes.
Today. And what they wanted to do was to say, when you are buying cattle and you see this mark, this is the promise of the value that you're getting. Does that make sense?
Right.
So it was about differentiating yourself and your product from the next person. But not only that, you have to communicate what the symbol means, right? So if the values around that symbol is grass-fed cattle, we don't milk our cattle, whatever it is, that was the value attribution of the time, that symbol represented that.
Yeah.
But we won't know that the symbol represents that until you tell us that the symbol represents that, and you consistently deliver on what it is that you say the symbol represents. So that's the fundamentals of branding, right?
Yeah.
It's about differentiating your product from the next one, and your product in how it looks. Fat, cow, silky skin, whatever it is,
Yes.
we need to see that if you say that's what your product is.
Shucks.
So in essence, branding is about communicating value. I will not know your value until you communicate it consistently. And when you start to attach symbols around it, the symbols speak for you when you're not in the room.
Wow. So it basically starts with the communication.
You have to, it has to work hand in hand, because you will not always get the opportunity to say, agenda woman is this, agenda woman is that. So when I put out agenda woman work, it must say what I needed to say before I'm in the room saying it.
Wow.
I can't contradict the two.
Yeah.
So I can't come and say, oh, we believe in beauty, we believe in this and that, and then you go to our page and it's not there. Then you're lying.
Yeah.
You have fabricated a
Shucks.
story.
Yeah.
You don't have a strong brand because there's no consistency in the product and what you say the product is going to offer me as a consumer. So brand, when it comes to fonts, colors, this is all psychology in branding, right? You don't understand, for instance, when I have a thin font that is light, what I am doing, but you feel it.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
You feel it. Yeah. And the consistency in me using that thin font in a particular way, that's psychology. You know, big brands pay people to create things like that make you feel a particular way, a color. I just went away on like a mini break, and I was at a 5-star lodge. From you drive in, it says private game reserve. Private. I'm thinking, yes. Private,
of course.
Privacy, I immediately perceive, something well thought out and intentional around
luxury,
yeah. No one said that. They just used the word private.
Yeah.
Do you understand? It's perception.
Oh, I love that.
It's perception.
Yeah.
We drive in. We stop. I see the place. I'm seeing the lights. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. Start pulling out my camera.
Yeah.
We get there. We sign some documents, and they say, okay, you're gonna leave your car here, and then the car they use for the game drives is what's gonna take you to the actual lodge. It's not this one.
Yeah.
So you leave your car there, and they take you on a 20-minute drive to the actual lodge.
Oh wow.
And when I got to the actual lodge, I understood what was happening. I was very clear about what was happening.
Wow.
From, they're like, okay, we have a cleansing ceremony hand cleansing ceremony when you arrive. All of those are touch points that communicate what their brand is. They don't have to do it. But let me tell you, I will go back and I'll spend that amount of money again.
Yeah.
Because every touch point spoke to what I was expecting and what I had perceived I'm going to receive. So that's branding. It's all the different touch points giving you an opportunity to sell your product to your consumer, not only once, but consistently, right? And in luxury, you're not trying to get to mass.
Yes.
And that's why you need to consider even more the font, all of those things. When you are a ShopRite, which is a mass market brand, maybe they don't need to think about all those touch points.
Yeah.
You walk into a ShopRite, you just need to get the stuff that you need to get because that's how they've positioned themselves. You walk into a Woolies, they've kind of thought a little bit more about how the brand shows up.
Yeah.
So touch points are a crucial part of brand building, but you have to first establish what do you want the brand to represent? And then use all the different experiences and the places where people interface with your brand to consistently say, what I said is the truth. And that's how you build trust. And through trust, you build loyal client base. And through a loyal client base, you continue to sell your product to the same people over and over again.
Oh, I love that so much, because it also speaks into the P word, which is the pricing factor. All right. And I'm curious to know, in your experience when you had the creative agency, and I know now you still work with some of the big businesses around. I'm curious to know, how does that factor into pricing? Because this is such a big conversation we normally have on the podcast. And some of the people that we work with, where people, they've got an idea of what they want it to look like, but there's some sort of like shying away from like, how do I price myself? Is this too expensive? Is it not? And particularly women in business, because men will charge you like exuberant amount of prices, but sometimes women, we can be a bit hesitant because we're trying to break in the market. How do we then leverage our brand to creating or building a price that makes us smile and that is sustainable for our businesses?
So there's two ways that I think about how to answer that. The first part is for you as Michelle, who's creating a product and you haven't done the groundwork of an Excel sheet that says this is what it takes to produce the product. Right? Because a lot of businesses don't do that.
That's true.
A lot of businesses don't do that. They don't actually write down, I took an Uber to the factory. It cost me this much. This is how many times I'm going to need to take that Uber. This is how much money I'm spending to take that Uber to go to the factory. This is what they charged me. Beyond what they charged me, this is what the packaging. When I did Agenda Women Brand & Co. at Mall of Africa last year, I start with the spreadsheet. If I'm going to sell something, if there's going to be an exchange of value. If there's going to be a change of money, actually, not value, I start with a spreadsheet and I do the numbers, right? And the numbers will tell you this thing is going to be profitable at this price point, right? And if you look and you benchmark across, because you have to benchmark. When you benchmark and you're like, gosh, okay, this means this product is 10 times more than the price point of my competitor, then you need to sit down and think a little bit more, right? Am I paying too much when it comes to the pipeline? You know, the person who's producing it, the amount of time I'm taking to produce it. Look at that first, you know, and say, am I paying too much? And if I'm paying too much, do I want to pay this much because of the quality that I get at the end? This is all an inquiry, right? That you need to actually do as an entrepreneur when it comes to deciding what your price point is going to be, right? And if you're like, if you start on the other end of it and you're like, I want to build a luxury product because my values are around luxury, then when you look at your pipeline in terms of what it takes to get it done and you're like, okay, it's taking me 10 rands because it's luxury. I want to sell it at 100 rands, right? The quality needs to deliver on luxury. The brand needs to deliver on luxury 100%. Because even if you have a beautiful brand that communicates luxury, the quality of the product doesn't say that there's going to be a disconnect, right? And you're going to lose clients. So that's the one piece where the numbers need to tell you what your price point needs to be. You need to benchmark across, you know, what is the, what's this word? The margin, right? The profit margin that you want, right? So is it 300%? Is it 200%? Is it 100%? Is it 30%? Depending on what kind of product you're selling, what the market value is, and where you want to pitch your products. Those are decisions that you need to make that are going to be informed by the numbers. Then there's the other part where entrepreneurs I guess it's the early stages, you know, you're still a young entrepreneur and you're still excited about entrepreneurship and you're just excited that you were able to develop this product and you just want to get it out of the market and you're just like, oh, what's the price that I can give it? And I'm just like, okay, but you need to do the work, right? That determines the price. And then your friends say, oh, it must be 300 rands. And you're like, oh, 300 rands is too much. And then Michelle says, this is definitely 200 rands. And then you're like, oh, 200 rands is too much. There's two things that can happen there. It's either you can overprice and that's going to be a problem if your brand is not going to back that price point. Then there's the other part where the amount of time and energy and money you've paid to create the product says it should be 300 rands and you're saying, no one's ever going to buy it. That's a you problem. That's a you problem.
And that's usually the case for a number of people.
That's a worth problem, right? Because sometimes we tie our worth to our output. And our output is sometimes determined by rand value.
Yes.
Right? So if I stay in a 10 million rand house, then I'm worthy. If I stay in a 6,000 rands apartment, then I'm not worthy of charging 500,000 rands for something. That's a you thing. That has nothing to do with the value of the product and the amount of time and the actual rands that you spent in creating the product.
Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, I always say entrepreneurship will unravel you. It will take you to therapy.
Yes.
Because a lot of the mistakes that you will make when you're building businesses have a lot to do with what you believe you are worthy of.
Yeah. That is so powerful, and it's so true, because I remember one of my first businesses that I started, I was a wedding planner, and I went to school, I'd done the numbers.
I saw the thing you posted.
Yes, it was like such a long time ago. But I used to have such a big insecurity because I used to do big weddings, and at that time I just bought myself a Hyundai Getz, like a secondhand Hyundai, white Hyundai Getz. And I just felt like, will people pay me what I'm worth if they see that this is the car I'm driving? So when I met with clients, I used to literally arrive so early that I park my car so far away, and then I walk into the coffee shop. And then when I'm done with the meeting, they'd have to leave, and I stay there so that they don't see me driving out.
Can I tell you before you even finish that in itself is a strategy.
I love
Depending
that.
on which industry you're in. You see, value is perception.
That's very true.
Value is perception. Because no one says, show me the spreadsheet so I can see how much you spent on the product.
That's true.
So that I can believe that it's worth the amount that you're charging me.
Yeah.
No one asks you that. Everyone buys on the perception that it is worth that price point. And that perception driver and builder is brand. It's brand building, right? So, of course, if I see you in a Hyundai Getz and you're charging me $1 million for my wedding, I'm going to feel like, does this make sense? Is she not going to run away with my money?
True.
Does she know how to manage? It's perception. And you have to understand you're not in the business of psychology. You're not going to change people's perception.
That's true.
You need to understand how it works.
Yeah.
And then use the language of perception in order to sell your product, right? If you're a priest, you're trying to convert people. If you're an entrepreneur, you're trying to sell your product.
Yeah.
So understand how to sell your product without disregarding your values. So I'm not saying change your value system, but I'm saying understand the language of perception and the language of value, and then start to craft your narrative around that.
I love that you say it's a strategy, because you are right.
It is.
I had gone and I did the course, and they took us through a pricing strategy. So I knew that the amount I'm charging is quite high because of the pricing strategy that I have. So how do I make sure that they don't see this pricing strategy and they not pay me because I'm driving a car like this?
Exactly.
Oh,
It's and people need to do that. They need to understand. If you're doing it because you understand it's a strategy and not because you feel less worthy.
Oh, wow.
Because it's two different things, right? And I also say a lot, don't take advice without interrogating it.
That's very true.
Don't go to your aunt who's like, you're worthy, you're so great at these weddings, drive your Getz and go and park at the front. Listen, they might still pay you, but you're going to have to go over a couple of hurdles.
That's true.
Instead of just like, okay, as part of my price point, I'm going to rent a car when I go to meetings.
Yes.
As part of my pricing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not like you're spending money that you don't have.
Yeah.
You've put it into your pricing that when you are working, you're going to drive a specific car.
Yeah.
If that's what's going to get you the sale, right? And of course, people have evolved a lot from that time, right? The perceptions around the cars that we drive and where we live and what we do have shifted. You know, the consumer is highly educated, highly aware now that, you know, there's a separation between what Michelle can do and what Michelle drives.
Yes.
But in the early days of my life, it was definitely a big thing.
Yeah.
The perception around what you drive and how you look, which is still a thing.
Yeah.
I always say in my personal branding workshop, I'm not trying to convert people. I'm trying to make a sale. It's two different jobs.
Yeah.
Right? Converting you to believe that if I'm dressed down, I'm still capable is too much work. That's not my job.
And there's no return in that. There's no ROI in that.
That's not my job. My job is to make you believe that the value that you're going to pay is worth what I'm telling you it's worth. So you need to be strategic. And I also said on Saturday during the workshop, there's a difference between how you feel and strategy. This is not a feelings conversation. It's a strategy conversation. You might feel differently, but you need to understand what's going to work.
So how do we separate the two for entrepreneurs, especially when you're starting? Because, and I think, and I've experienced this where when I started my business was almost like me. So it's like it was led by what I felt, my intuition and everything else. And as it's grown, to be honest, it's been very hard for me to separate myself from like the feeling versus what we said we are going to do. So how do we make that distinction? And I ask that because, I mean, I've seen you build Agenda Women over the years, and it's grown so much to a point where there's a full team now. And I can imagine it's not based on your feelings anymore. How did you separate the two?
Culture.
Sure.
When you build an organization, you build it of a lot of times when you're the founder like yourself, when you're talking about the founder of Canva, you know, when you're talking about a lot of founders, these are individuals that started on their own. The founders of Instagram, this was two guys, the founders of Airbnb, you know, when you saw that letter that the founder of Airbnb wrote to his staff during COVID, you understood that it was still, his values were still a big driver in the organization. Wow. So here's the thing. You have you as Michelle, you have Resonate as your company.
Yeah.
You start the company. Your values are part of what builds this company.
Yes.
What's important is to understand what your values are so that when you build the culture of the organization, the culture of the organization lends itself to your values.
Yeah.
So from the people you hire at the beginning, those are the people that are going to drive the culture of the organization. So in essence, the organization remains fundamentally rooted into your values.
Wow.
If you're still a person that's running it and you're still the person that's hiring it, it's not about how you feel. It's about values, the values of the organization. What do we do in this scenario? You know, there's a book I read a long time ago, Branding for Dummies. You know those yellow ones?
Yes.
And they had such a beautiful example around how values drive the culture of organization. Wow. Johnson & Johnson's has a huge charter at their offices that says this is who we are at Johnson & Johnson. It was written by the founders. So it came in essence from the values that they held at the time. And then there was a situation where there was a specific pill that was in the market and someone had gotten sick from the pill being in the market, and they had to ask themselves, what do we do? When that happens and Michelle is no longer in the organization, the culture of the organization is what drives that decision. Yeah. It's that charter that says we care about our people. They pulled all of those pills from the shelves. They made a big loss, but at the core, it was a values decision, not a feelings decision. It's a values. Feelings evolve.
Yeah.
Your values are grounded in you.
Yeah.
It's the thing that you do when you wake up in the morning. It's the thing that you do when you have tough decisions that to make and you say, what do I what do I believe?
Yeah.
Right? So when we build organizations, the reason Starbucks is different from Motherland Coffee, it's because it has different founders.
Yeah.
All of them sell coffee, but the ethos and the culture of the organization differs. So I don't want people to shy away from understanding that your values are going to drive the culture. Sure. And when you are not aligned with your values and anchored in your values, you struggle often to hire people.
Yeah.
Because that's another conversation we need to have honestly as entrepreneurs. It's not that there aren't people to hire. Yeah. It's not that everyone can't do the job like you. Yeah. You are the problem.
Are you calling me out?
You are the problem.
I feel called out.
If you cannot lead, you are the problem.
Yeah.
If you cannot inspire, you're the problem. If you cannot coach, you're the problem. Yeah. There's work that you need to do as an entrepreneur to grow into becoming a leader. Yeah. You can be a great entrepreneur and a horrible leader.
Yeah. Sure. That actually leads into one of the last questions I wanted to ask you, because again, you know, every time you speak, I'm like drawing pictures and things in my head, and I can't help but put the connection of your feelings and your values. You've once posted something about, I think it was the Ikigai, and you've posted it. And I was actually thinking about that, but putting my own little words in it now. And I've seen you share a lot, and part of the newsletter that you shared yesterday was talking about living well, which is also part of the pillars. And I'm curious to know, how has personal development and self-care helped you kind of develop yourself and distinguish between the self, the feelings that you have and the values, but also progress the organization?
Two things in answering that question. I wish... And if there are CEOs of big organizations watching this who are male, I wish they spoke a lot about their own self-development journeys. We underestimate the impact of self-development because sometimes the people who are at the top are not talking about the fact that they're doing it.
That's true.
To be a great leader, you need to have a level of understanding of who you are and how you interface with situations, right? A lot of male CEOs invest in coaches as they build their career. They invest in therapy. as they navigate.
Yeah.
It's a very hard job. There's no way it will not expose who you are and also make you ask yourself who you are. And it's mentors that you have along the way that really shape who you become when you are a leader. So it's crucial. I don't know a great leader who does not understand the importance of self-development, no matter what they call it. Because you know how men are. They don't want to use the soft words that we use. But the mentor is your self-development strategy. The coach is your self-development strategy. The therapist is your self-development strategy. The conference that you went to attend is your self-development strategy. The MIT course that you took is a self-development strategy. These are things that big leaders are doing and investing in consistently that we think are just going to come from us just like, I'll figure it out or I'll Google something. No, you have to have a deep understanding of human beings in order to live well, to lead well. And sometimes if you are unable to be a great leader, sometimes you hire someone who's softer than you, right? Who can do those things for you. I want to bring it back to entrepreneurs because this is something that I speak about with so much conviction because I've been the horrible leader.
Really?
100%.
Wow.
I've been horrible. And I always had, and this is like such, if there's one thing anyone who's listening to this needs to take away, the entrepreneurs that think that they are better than their teams, you don't have a team. Because no one is supporting you.
That's true. Sure.
You are just building people who are going to glorify your efforts. You're not hiring people who are actually good at what they do. One of the key learnings now in particularly hiring and understanding how to build great teams is you need to hire people who are passionate about what they do. Right? They don't even need to be passionate about your business. They must be passionate about what they do. Because when they step into your business, they will want to do what they do very well. And that's how your business will benefit.
Oh, I love that.
A lot of times, we cop out as entrepreneurs because I don't have money to hire someone great. And that's a true thing. But you have to be clear. When you don't hire someone great, you're gonna have problems. You need to have a clear strategy around developing that person if you feel like they have potential. I hire for potential at a specific level now, not potential at ground level.
Of course.
I don't have the capacity to build up to expertise.
100.
I hire at expertise where there's potential to be great. The newsletter you got yesterday, I didn't write it.
Wow, really?
No. I don't even know what was in it.
It sounded like you.
That's what you do when you build organizations that are grounded in values that you uphold and you start to inject culture into your organization. I was very clear that the people I hire who are going to be working around me, what they need to look like. They need to be, people who obsess. You need to send me, if you're my designer, you need to be sending me like, did you see this? What do you think about this? You're obsessed with design, right? Then I don't have to think about design.
That's true.
Then I can let it go. As much as I'm great at it and I love it, I can let it go. So it's also understanding what you can let go and what you can't let go. You can't hire a Michelle.
Sure.
Your business does not need another Michelle. It needs someone who's great at something that you need to let go of. You can still sit with 80% of the business, but 20% you're like, okay, Stephanie can do that and do it well. I don't need to think about that. I need to focus on this 80% and I need to focus on finding people who are going to get me to a point where I am sitting on 30%. And then there's like 5 people who the 70% is distributed against. And Stephanie does not need to know all the things that you know. So if you can pivot from project planning to strategy to this and that, she doesn't need to be that. She can just come and take the strategy piece away from you.
Wow.
Because that's what entrepreneurs do wrong.
That's true.
You want someone, you are special. I think also you need to accept as an entrepreneur that it's visionaries who take this direction. It's courageous people, right? It's a unique type of individual. Don't go out trying to find employees who are entrepreneurs. They're going to leave also.
That's very true.
And go and start their own businesses. You have to have a proposition that is strong enough to attract employees. And the person I just hired now, they came to my shop last year and we were sitting and they were talking. I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm looking for, but I can't afford it. I asked her, I'm like, so how much are you earning where you are? She tells me, I'm like, I do not have that money, But I stepped away and I was looking. I mean, I took 6 months to find her.
Wow.
And I interviewed over 30 people.
Phew.
And I was looking for someone who is a digital strategist, right? But I was finding YouTubers.
Wow. I can see that.
I was finding YouTubers. I was finding people who are building something similar. That's not someone who's going to come and make my business better.
That is very true.
I want someone who can leave my business and go and work and sell burgers. Because what I'm looking for is expertise.
I see. Oh, there's so much power in that.
I'm looking for expertise.
Yeah.
I'm not looking necessarily for someone who's passionate about women empowerment. I'm looking for someone who's obsessed with what they love, which is what I need.
Yeah.
Right? And that distinction is very, very important. And entrepreneurs need to have a very hard conversation with themselves around where they are in their entrepreneurial journey, what they need to do to get to where they need to go to. And it is a conundrum. Like, where do I spend my money? I need someone to help me to make money.
Yes.
But I don't have money to get someone to help me.
Yeah.
Right? And entrepreneurship is problem solving.
Yeah.
No one's going to come and solve that for you.
That is true.
That is your job to solve. So please stop talking about people being horrible. There's no one to hire and they are bad and this. You're the problem.
Yeah.
It's you.
That is so. I feel like you've just set me free for something. It was like, that is such a true thing. And I mean, ties back to the self-development thing that you were talking about. Like, if you do the work, you'll be able to be a good leader enough to build an organization. Because essentially, the organization is a reflection of who the entrepreneur and the visionary is.
Can I tell you?
Especially when it starts.
Anchoring into this thing again, the person I just hired was not a person that did not have a job.
Sure.
They had a full-time job with privileges. And I had to convince them. I had to convince them that what I'm building is worth them taking the risk. You know, she said to me the other day, what happens if you fall over and die? What happens to me? So I have succession planning in my business.
Wow.
I'm building a business. There is a part where you pivot from doing what you just love into building a business.
Yeah.
I slept at 2 a.m. yesterday just doing administration.
Whew.
Just losing my mind over where sits where and who's going to find, like, where just being organized so that if I fall over and die, my organization continues to live.
Yeah.
And if I'm not at a place where it can continue to live, the people I've employed know who to call, know how to get the money that they need to get to continue with their lives. They are giving me their lives. They are responsible for people in their lives.
Sure.
So I need to act like I'm responsible for families. I can't just be going around dilly-dallying and just being like, oh, well, we'll see. So we have to have tough conversations as entrepreneurs and the responsibility of entrepreneurship, the responsibility of hiring people. And if you're hiring people who are desperate, you're going to get desperate kind of work. If you're hiring people who want to be great at what they do, it's gonna need you to step up.
Yeah. Oh. Yo, that's so powerful, and it's speaking to me in so many ways. I feel like I'm going to watch this again and like write so many notes. I have a last question for you. And, I've been thinking about this question a lot because I've met and speak to a couple of people who will come and say, for instance, I've got somebody who's saying that they have a story to tell and they want to build a platform where they can support women who are widows, grieving young widows that they want to speak to. And they want to host an event, or they've hosted an event or two. And I would love for you to maybe just share with us around business models in this case.
Yeah.
Because I think for somebody who maybe doesn't know the Agenda Women communities, like people will see a flyer online and they think, oh, it's an events. They just do events. Like, it's like, that's all there is. Not realizing that there's actually a business model attached to that. And maybe my question for you is, how can somebody who's got a message and a passion for something specific to build a community, how can they monetize it?
Is this not my IP? I'm trying to figure this out. Do you know how long it took me?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I don't think there is one specific business model, right? When it comes to the empowerment agenda. I think people sometimes get lazy, right? And they want to replicate what they see other people doing.
Yeah.
So let me give this advice.
Okay.
Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. That's your homework.
Okay.
If you want to create an empowerment project.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And listen, it's going to evolve. Mine has evolved and I'm not done evolving because I have a vision.
Yeah.
I have a very clear vision of where I want to go.
Yeah.
But I think investigate, and I don't even need you to go and buy the book Start With Why.
Yes.
Just the golden circle. It's a fundamental principle that we all knew before Simon Sinek took it and made it a great presentation, which in itself is just awesome. You know, that you can take something that everyone knows and just package it differently. And people are like, oh,
amazing.
Absolutely amazing. So you start with why, which is the middle of your circle.
Yes.
Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
Why are you doing what you're doing? And your why needs to have a clear output.
Yeah.
Clear output. What do you want to happen when you've done the thing that you're doing?
Sure.
Yes, you want to be a safe space for widows.
Yeah.
Right? Then what?
Sure.
Then what for them?
Like after the event, then what?
Forget even the event. Let's say you just say your why is you want to be a safe space for widows. You haven't even said you're going to do that through an event or you're going to do it digitally. You haven't said that. You're just saying that's your why. My question is then what? Then what happens? Because this is an exchange, right? You are addressing a pain point, right? And is it a valid pain point to address? Is there a market for that pain point? Or is this something that you can do as a hobby? Right? Because you have to investigate if is there a market for the need that you're addressing, right? And when you're done saying this is my why of Resonate Hub, with a clear output and the pain point that you're addressing and how you're addressing it, well, the pain point that you're addressing, the how would be then the next part of your golden circle. How are you addressing it, right? And this is a tough thing, and it's been tough for me for a very long time, especially when I'm around people who dream bigger than me. And they're just like, I remember a friend of mine, and I love Nigerians. I love Nigerians. I think they just have this madness
their
about
boldness
them.
needs to be bottled.
Let me tell you, insane.
All of us.
And it's so funny, every time I meet them, they're just like, don't you have Nigerian blood? And I'm just like, I don't think I'm as crazy as you guys. But I remember speaking to a Nigerian friend of mine who's highly influential, really, really highly accomplished, like high net worth individual. And I told him about Agenda Woman and he said to me, what is the highest version of the thing that you're building?
Ooh. Oh my gosh. But this goes back to the point you made earlier about relationships and networks, that they give you access to dreaming bigger.
He said, what's the highest vision of the thing that you're building? And he said, I see this thing a lot with you, woman. You think small. You want to do small things. What's the highest? I had no answer. Now I do. Ooh. I didn't then.
I love that.
And it's very important to understand that you might not have the answers to the things that I'm talking about, but start where you are. Start where you are. Write down what you understand now. Yeah. And then when you go into the how, be clear. What's the highest version of the safe space? Is it like 10 million safe spaces around the world? Is it a co-working community of widows? What are they looking for? What is the avatar of a widow? Where are they spending their money? If that's your passion point and it's particularly that specific demographic, understand them and figure out how they're spending their money, and how can you tap into that? How can you tap into other needs that they have? And then when you're done saying how, then you are saying what? Yeah. That's the tough part. Sure. What are they buying from you? What are you actually doing? And is it a business or is it a hobby or is it let me tell you, the 2,150 that people are going to be paying for the Agenda Women Summit this year is not going to cover the Agenda Women Summit costs.
100%.
It's just not.
Yeah.
The event is not the business. The event is not the business.
Yeah.
So I can't charge 5,000 rands for a one-day event. Yeah. Then I would be profitable. If you pay me 5,000 rands, then I'm making money. Yeah. But 2,000 rands, I'm not making money. Yeah. Right? But I am making money.
Got you.
So you need to be clear about the proposition that you're offering. Is it commercially viable? Is it profitable? Yeah. Is it sustainable? It's your responsibility. I feel like sometimes when people want to do things that are impactful, they almost feel like everyone should say, oh, because you're being impactful, let's help you. Yes. No. No, we also want to be impactful in our own things.
Of course.
We also have our own impact agendas.
Yeah.
If that's yours, own it.
Yeah.
And let it be your responsibility to make sure if you want it to sustain you, it sustains you. No one is going to give you like, I don't know, hand-me-downs of wisdom around how to be impactful.
Yeah.
It's your agenda. Figure it out. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It is not easy. I hate it even when people give me this advice. It's not easy. But I think what maturity has taught me and wisdom is stay the course.
Yeah.
Stay the course. And just closing, Elizabeth Gilbert, and I spoke about this in another podcast, and I think it's important in this part because I hate it when I listen to people speaking and I'm just like, oh, you have it figured out. This is useless to me, right? And I had that encounter at the beginning of my career. I thought this guy hated me. I went for advice and he told me something random and I was like, what? Now I understand what he was saying.
Wow.
Right? And I hated him for over a year.
Are you serious?
Absolutely. Because I was just like, these people, you act like you want to help us, but you actually don't.
Yeah, just
right?
giving us vague advice.
And that's what happens when you listen to things like this sometimes.
Yeah.
But I want to give you ease in that, you know, Elizabeth Gilbert speaks about passion.
Mm-hmm.
She's speaking about passion, but I want you to contextualize it around process and growing and learning.
Okay.
She says sometimes, you know, people speak about passion and you're just like, I don't know what mine is. Like, you're overwhelming me. And I know that this conversation might feel like that sometimes for people. It's just like overwhelming. Like, where do I start? And she said the thing that she's understood about passion is life gives you clues and you need to follow the breadcrumbs.
You've shared that with me years ago.
Life gives you clues.
Yeah.
And in your inquiry around how to monetize your business, how to build it and make it bigger, how to do this, how to do that, you need to stay the course. Continue to have a conversation. Go to someone and say, I was listening to a podcast and this lady said this. What do you think it means? Don't bear the responsibility of me unpacking everything for you in one podcast.
Wow.
Allow the process to give you clues because that's how you're going to create something great, something I haven't created. If I gave you my manual, you're just going to create what I created.
That's true.
Right? But if you listen to me and you're like, that's interesting. Let me go and ask someone else. Right? Let me ask someone who's smarter. Right? Let me consistently ask this question and see what clues I'm getting.
Yeah.
That's how you're going to create something we've never seen in the world.
Sure. Nomndeni Mdaki, I could speak to you for hours. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This has been so fruitful and so impactful for me. And I know it's been the same for our community.
It was so much
as well.
fun.
Yeah.
It was
I
so much
enjoyed
fun.
it.
I love speaking to smart people.
Yeah. Thank you.
I love speaking to smart people.
Thank you so much. Resonate community. I hope that you enjoyed that as much as I did because there were so many light bulb moments for me in this conversation that kind of gave me a bit of direction around my business, around my personal life, around relationships, around so many things I've been pondering on. And I have no doubt that they did the same for you. And I'm curious to know what is it that you took away and what really spoke to you. Let us know in the comment section if you're watching this on YouTube. But thank you so much for joining us once again. We had Nomndeni Mdaki, the CEO and founder of Agenda Women, and we'll see you guys in our next podcast episode. Goodbye.